In the previous class, we have discussed about the loss of biodiversity. Now, in this class, we will discuss about the causes for biodiversity loss. What are the main causes for the loss of biodiversity or for the extinction of species? The increased rates of biodiversity loss or the increased rates of species extinction, it is mainly because of human activities. And there are four major causes for biodiversity loss. So they are very important for your examination. We will see what are the four major causes for biodiversity loss. So in that, the first one is habitat loss and fragmentation. Habitat loss and fragmentation. Second one is overexploitation, and the third one is alien species invasion. And the last one is coextinction. So these are the four major causes for biodiversity loss. So it is habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion and coextinction. Now we will discuss one by one in detail. So in the first one is habitat loss and fragmentation. So here this one, the habitat loss and fragmentation, it is the major cause for the extinction of species, and it mainly occurs through the destruction or the fragmentation of natural habitats. So natural habitats in the sense a forest, a grassland, everything. So all these are the examples for the natural habitats. Here this habitat loss, it occurs mainly due to the destruction or fragmentation of natural habitats there are different reasons how the habitat loss will be taking place, like filling wetlands, flooding grasslands, and cutting of trees, burning a forest, clearing some area for vegetation. All these will destroy the habitat. See, as I said, filling wetlands. See, wetlands are the areas which contains both water and soil, and it is an example for aquatic ecosystem. If it is an example for aquatic ecosystem, then we can find the rich biodiversity of aquatic plants and aquatic animals. But when these wetlands are converted into a cropland or any other area, then the aquatic habitat will be destroyed, or the aquatic ecosystem gets destroyed. That is one reason. And plugging of grasslands. Here grassland is also an example for the ecosystem. We have a grassland ecosystem where we can find the biodiversity. But when that grassland has been plugged out, at that time all the biodiversity or species which are present on the grassland, they got extinction. And cutting of trees. When we are cutting off trees, the number of plants or number of trees will be decreasing, thereby the biodiversity loss will be taking place or the habitat loss will be occurring. In a forest, if you are cutting down the trees, the habitat will be lost. And burning a forest. If a forest is burned, then it leads to the habitat loss. And when we clear some area for vegetation, if for example in a particular area, in a forest area, we will be converting some area of forest to the vegetative for the cultivating land. So the forest areas there, in that forest area we have taken some area for cultivation or for vegetation purpose. So for all due to all these factors, the habitat will be lost. Habitat in the sense we are talking about the natural habitat. So natural habitat will be lost because of the various factors. And moreover, urbanization, industrialization, pollution and population explosion, these are other major causes for the loss of biodiversity. isn't it? So due to urbanization, industrialization, and moreover very pollution and population explosion, all these will be leads to the loss of biodiversity or species extinction. And the most dramatic example came from the tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforest. So here the tropical rainforest, once this tropical rainforest it will occupy, it has been occupied 14% of the Earth's land surface. I am saying that once the tropical rainforest occupied 14% of the Earth's land surface, but now it is not less than 6%. I mean to say, once the 14% of the Earth's land area is covered by the tropical rainforest, but now it is reduced to 6%. Why it is reduced? Because the forest is being destroyed very fast, isn't it? Because of the destruction of forest, the 14% of the tropical rainforest now it is reduced to only 6%. And another thing, by the time we complete this chapter, the 1,000 more hectares of tropical rainforest would have been destroyed, because in such a fast rate the forests are being destroyed, so that it leads to the habitat loss. The forest, it is the natural habitat, it getting destroyed. That's why the 14% of the tropical rainforest is now reduced to 6%. And one more thing, Amazon rainforest or Amazon forest. So you know, Amazon forest which is very huge. Because of that reason, the Amazon forest is regarded as the lungs of the planet. Lungs of the planet. You should remember this. Amazon rainforest is regarded as the lungs of the planet, because Amazon rainforest is very huge and which contains or which harbors millions of species. Millions of species. So Amazon rainforest, it is regarded as the lungs of the planet and which harbors millions of species. But now today this forest is also being cut and cleared. The Amazon rainforest is also cut and cleared for cultivating soybean, and some area of the forest is being converted into the grassland for raising beef, cattle, etc. So try to understand here the examples I am giving. Tropical rainforest, once the 14% of the Earth's land area is covered by tropical rainforest, but now it is reduced to 6% because it is being destroyed very fast. And the Amazon forest, it is regarded as the lungs of the planet which harbors millions of species. We can find millions of species in the Amazon rainforest, but now today it is also being cut and cleared for cultivating soybean, and it has been converted into grassland for raising beef, cattle, etc. And as I said, the wetlands. So the natural wetland systems, the wetlands are converted into croplands. Wetlands are converted into croplands. When these wetlands are converted into croplands, it leads to the extinction of aquatic organisms, because there the aquatic habitat being destroyed. And degradation of many natural habitats by pollution. Pollution is also another major factor which leads to the destruction of habitat and causes the extinction of species. So firstly, we are talking about the destruction or habitat loss, then it leads to the biodiversity loss or species extinction. And today, the natural habitats, most of the natural habitats will be converted into teak and eucalyptus plantations. So when you go to the village side, there you can observe the teak plantations and eucalyptus plantations. So today the natural habitat habitats are being converted into the plantations, thereby it decreases the biodiversity. So that is called a habitat loss. Then what is the fragmentation? Here fragmentation is the process of formation of discontinuities. These discontinuities are nothing but fragments. So the formation of discontinuities are fragments. But how these fragments will be formed? Either by the geological process or by man-made activities. So in the natural habitat, the fragments will be formed. See for example, how the fragments will be formed in a natural habitat. See for example, when we take a forest. So a forest, it is about this much area is occupied by the forest. But when this forest is become fragments, like for example, here we have one patch of forest, here we have another patch of forest. So here the fragments are occurred. How occurred? It may be because of geological processes. It is mainly because of natural. Geological in the sense, the natural process are maybe due to man-made activities. When we take the example, you will understand clearly. As I said, so the complete forest, now it is being fragmented, or the forest is made into fragments. So here we have a forest, here a patch of forest is there, here a patch of forest is there. And this patch of forest is surrounded by croplands. So croplands in the sense, these are man-made activities, because that forest is destroyed or converted into croplands by humans. So it is a man-made activity, or it may be converted into orchards, plantations, or urban areas. Actually, this entire thing is initially a forest. Now that forest is made into fragments, and here we can observe the patches of forest which is surrounded by cropland, orchards, plantations, urban areas, etc. This is the example for fragmented habitat. Fragmented habitat. So the fragmented habitat looks like this. So what happens when fragments are formed? When fragments are formed, it restricts the movement of organisms across the fragments. Here the organisms, when initially this much forest area is there, the organisms are freely moving in their territory. But when this forest is become fragments, the organisms which are present in the fragments, they cannot move freely to another habitat. So here it will be restricting the movement of organisms across the fragments, thereby it leads to species extinction. But how it leads to species extinction? Because thick forest, if this much area is a forest, that thick forest will receive large amount of water, sufficient sunlight, thereby it can maintain the water cycle through evaporation and transpiration. But due to the disappearance of large habitat, because here these many area, this much of area, it is being disappeared. So because of the disappearance of large habitat, it is vulnerable to drought and desertification. The forest can get converted into a desert because of drought or because of less availability of water. So that is what called as fragmentation. So fragmentation is nothing but formation of discontinuities or fragments through geological process or man-made activities. And when fragments are formed, it restricts the movement of organisms across the fragments, thereby it decreases the species or it causes the species extinction. So this is about fragmentation. Then, so now we have talked about the habitat loss and fragmentation. Now we will discuss overexploitation. So here, overexploitation is nothing but resources that will damage the Earth's biodiversity, because there is a rich biodiversity on the Earth. When we overuse or misuse those natural resources or renewable resources, it will definitely damages the Earth's biodiversity. And we humans, we are always dependent on nature for food and shelter, isn't it? We are always dependent on nature to obtain food and shelter. But here, when need turns to greed, when need turns to greed, it leads to overexploitation of natural resources. So here, when you actually need something you will obtain as much as you need. So that is called need. But when this need turns to greed, you will think that everything is required to you only, or you will think that everything is mine, I need all. At that time we cannot say that is need, we can say it as greed. So that is what I am saying. So when need turns to greed, it leads to over exploitation. If you really need those things, you will obtain as much as you need. So at that time it cannot cause over exploitation. But when the need turns to greed, it leads to over exploitation of the natural resources. And which are the factors? See, for example, wood logging, hunting, poaching, fishing, etc. So all these factors will reduce the number of species in the ecosystem, because wood logging, humans, they need wood and they hunt certain organisms. So because of all these wood logging, hunting, poaching and fishing, so they at that time they will be overusing those natural resources, thereby the number of species will be decreased. And in the last 500 years, many species got extinction. Especially the stellars, sea cow, passenger pigeon and dodo. So these are the particular examples which have become extinct in the last 500 years due to over-exploitation. You should remember, see, I have given many examples, they got extinction in the 500 years. But due to over-exploitation, these are the species which got extinction in the last 500 years. It is very important. You should remember, stellars, sea cow, passenger pigeon and dodo, these are destroyed or they got extinction because of over-exploitation. And today many marine fish population is becoming declining. Many marine fish population becomes declining. It is because of over harvesting. See, the fishes will be harvested as we need, but when they are over harvested, the number of fish population is also being declining. That is also one of the example for over exploitation. So what is over exploitation? It is the overuse or misuse of renewable resources, and those that overuse, it leads to or it damages the Earth's biodiversity, because we are mainly dependent upon the nature to obtain food and shelter. So always need is important, but when need turns to greed, it leads to over exploitation of many species. So that is over exploitation. Now we will discuss alien species invasion. So alien species are nothing but non-native plants. Before only I told you the alien species are nothing but the non-native species which came from another habitat and the destroying habitat in another habitat. When we take the example, you will come to understand. So what are the alien species? So alien species are non-native species. When these non-native species are alien species, when they are introduced in a habitat, maybe unintentionally or deliberately for whatever purpose. Maybe for economic or other use. For any purpose, if these species are introduced unintentionally or deliberately, what will happen? So some of these alien species, they become invasive. So this term is very important. Invasive, which means they will spread rapidly. They will spread rapidly and they will leads to or they will cause us the extinction of indigenous species or native species. So these non-native species, they came from some other habitat, and here when they came to some habitat, here they will spread rapidly and cause us the extinction of the native species in this habitat. And these invasive species or these non-native alien species, they are always harmful to native species. The non-native species are always harmful to native species, and these species, alien species, are regarded as the second major cause for biodiversity loss. I told you the first major cause for biodiversity loss is that habitat loss and fragmentation, and the second major cause for biodiversity loss is alien species invasion. So what are alien species? They are non-native species. When they are introduced in a habitat for whatever purpose, unintentionally or deliberately, some of the alien species become invasive. They will spread rapidly and causes the extinction of native species. But you should remember, the non-native species are always harmful to native species. When we take the example, you can understand better. So the first example I can give you is Eichhornia. Eichhornia or water hyacinth. You are familiar with this Eichhornia, also called as water hyacinth, and it is also regarded as a terror of Bengal. Everything you studied in the first chapter. So this Eichhornia, actually it is an alien species or it is a non-native species. It has been introduced in India because of its beautiful flowers and the shape of the leaves. When you look at the flower of Eichhornia and shape of the leaf, it is very interesting. That's why, because of its beautiful flowers and shape of the leaves, it has been introduced in India. But this becomes invasive and it spreads all over the water body within a short period of time, and it dries out all the oxygen and causes the death of aquatic organisms. So whatever the aquatic plants and animals are there, they are not getting sufficient oxygen because this Eichhornia will be draining out all the oxygen. That's why it is regarded as a terror of Bengal. Now I hope you are understanding now. It is a non-native species. It is introduced in the water body. So in the water body, whatever the plant and animal species are there, they become extinct because of the introduction of this Eichhornia. So this is one of the best example we can give, that is the alien species invasion. And the other example, I think you are all familiar with the environment damage caused by the invasive weed species like Parthenium. It is commonly called as the carrot grass, and in our language it can be called as Congress Gida. We will call it as a Congress Gida. So this Parthenium, it is also one of the most invasive weed. See, you can see everywhere Parthenium. We have no use from this Parthenium, but it can grow anywhere in any habitat, and it will destroy the other cultivated crops. If, for example, in the cultivated area, we are cultivating certain crops. In that area, this Parthenium is able to grow, and that Parthenium, it will destroy the indigenous or the native species. So one example is Parthenium, and other example is Lantana. So Parthenium, Lantana, actually Parthenium, it is a small herb, and Lantana, it is a shrub. can find these two plants, these two invasive weeds everywhere. So when you move along the road, you can see on either side of the road, you can observe the presence of Parthenium and Lantana. Even they can able to grow in the cultivated area, thereby causes the extinction of the native species. And another example, the best example, you should remember this, Nile perch. Nile perch, it is a predator fish. It is a predator fish. It is introduced in the Lake Victoria. So Nile perch, it is the predator fish which is introduced in Lake Victoria in East Africa. In East Africa, and because of the introduction of this Nile perch, it led to the extinction of more than 200 species of cichlid fishes. Try to understand. So one example is Alcarnia, you can remember better, and the remaining invasive weeds are Parthenium and Lantana, which are commonly seen in our habitat also. And this one, Nile perch, is very important. The Nile perch, it is a predator fish which is introduced in the Lake Victoria in East Africa. In East Africa. So because of the introduction of this Nile perch in the Lake Victoria, it leads to the extinction of more than 200 species of cichlid fishes. You can observe, you can look at the image of cichlid fishes. There are different species of cichlid fishes, but they got extinct because of the introduction of Nile perch. And one more example is that it is recently the illegal introduction of the African catfish. African catfish called as Clarias garliapinus. So this is the African catfish, and recently the illegal introduction of this African catfish, which is Clarias garliapinus, actually for aquaculture purpose they have been introduced, but because of the introduction of this African catfish, it leads to, or it is one of the threat for the local or native catfishes in our rivers. So this is the African catfish. When it is introduced into our rivers, it leads to the extinction of many native catfishes or many indigenous catfishes. So this is about alien species invasion. You should remember what are the alien species, how they will be causing extinction to the native species. And examples you should remember: Icornia, Parthenium, Lantana, Nile perch, and you should remember because of the introduction of Nile perch, it causes the extinction of more than 200 species of cichlid fishes, and because of the introduction of African catfish, Clarias garliapinus, it causes the extinction of many native catfishes. So this much we can study about alien species. And lastly, coextinction. Here coextinction is nothing but in nature, there are many obligatory mutualistic relationships exist in the nature. I think you are all familiar with the mutual relationship between the two organisms, where both the organisms will be benefited. And if they are obligatory in the sense, both the organisms are completely dependent on each other. So without this organism, the other organism cannot survive, and without that organism, this organism cannot able to survive. That is called as obligatory mutualistic relationship. So such type of relationships exist in nature. Here, the extinction of one species will automatically causes the extinction of another species. As I said, both are mutually completely dependent on each other. If extinction of one species will automatically cause the extinction of the other species. So what I am saying here is, when one species is extinct, the plant and animals which are associated in an obligatory fish, which is the host organism because it providing shelter to many parasites. If for example, if this fish becomes extinct, if this fish becomes extinct, then whatever the parasites which are found on the fish, they also become extinct. So this is called as co-extinction. So this organism got extinction, that's why the parasites which are present on the fish also got extinction. And one more example. Yeah, another example, the Pranova moth and yucca plant. Pranova moth and yucca plant. Here, Pranova yuccacella, it is a moth. The scientific name of moth is Pranova yuccacella. So this Pranova moth, it actually lays eggs in the ovary of yucca plant. So when we observe the yucca flower, so within the ovary of a yucca flower, this moth will lay eggs. So it will deeply enters into the ovary. So in that ovary, it will lay eggs. And simultaneously, when this moth, it will be moving from one flower to another flower. At that time, simultaneously, it will be collecting the pollens. So when they come to lay eggs, at the same time, the pollens will be deposited on the stigma of the flower. Thereby, it causes it affects the pollination. So pollination in yucca flower, it is mainly achieved by the Pranova moth, isn't it? Because this Pranova moth, when they come to lay eggs in the ovary, it will be collecting the pollens and deposited on the stigma of the flower. Thereby, pollination is achieved, isn't it? So the flower is also benefited with the Pranova moth as it helps in pollination. And even the Pranova moth also benefited from the yucca plant because the yucca plant provides a shelter for laying the eggs. What happens if Pranova moth is not there? If there is no Pranova moth in yucca plant, pollination cannot be achieved, isn't it? So that if a Pranova moth got extinction, even the yucca plant will also got extinct. If for example, there is no yucca plant, then where this Pranova moth will deposit its eggs? If there is no yucca plant, the Pranova moth cannot survive, so this will also got extinction. So this is how both the organisms will got extinction. That is called as co-extinction. Simultaneously, if one species is become extinct, then it will automatically causes the extinction of other organism or other species. So these are the main causes for biodiversity loss, isn't it? So here, because of the habitat loss, whenever the habitat is lost, there the biodiversity will be lost. And fragmentation, because of fragmentation, the number of species will become extinct. That is one reason for biodiversity loss. Overexploitation, when we overuse or misuse, the number of species will become reduced and ultimately it leads to extinction of species. And alien species invasion, and these alien species, when they are introduced in a habitat, so it causes the extinction of the native species. One non-native species can able to cause the extinction of many native species, thereby the biodiversity is lost. And co-extinction, if one species become extinct, another will automatically got extinction. And these many causes we can study about the causes for biodiversity loss. Now we will study few objective questions related to today's class. So the first question, 69th question. The Amazon rainforest harboring probably millions of species is being cut and cleared for option A, cultivating soya beans, option B, converting to grasslands for raising beef cattle, option C, playing cricket or IPL, option D, both A and B. So if option B is correct, both A and B. That Amazon rainforest rainforest it is cut and cleared mainly for cultivating soya bean and converted into grassland for raising beef cattle. And next question, which of the following species extinct in the last 500 years due to overexploitation? So here quagga, stellar sisika, passenger pigeon, thylacine. And options, first option A and B, option B and C, option C A, B, C, and option D A, B, C, D. So here option B is correct, B and C. Stellar seagull and passenger pigeon, these are the species which got extinction mainly because of over exploitation. So all these got extinction in the last 500 years, but only because of over exploitation, the stellar seagull and passenger pigeon got extinct. Next question, the alien species Nile perch introduced into Lake Victoria in option A South Africa, option B North America, option C South America, option D East Africa. So it is in East Africa. The next question, due to introduction of Nile perch into Lake Victoria, how many species of cichlid fish become extinct? Option A 200, option B 1200, option C 2000, option D 687. So the Nile perch led to the extinction of more than 200 species of cichlid fishes. So these many questions are enough for today, and in the next class we will discuss how to conserve biodiversity